What's up, everybody? All right, today we're gonna finish the back of this quarter. At this point, you've learned a lot of the basic modeling principles. You've learned how to make text, you've learned how to sculpt, you've learned how to add modifiers to your objects, like the bend modifier. You've learned how to import images into your file so that you know how to use them as reference whenever you're creating anything. And that's what we're going to start with. Is we're going to create our image plane and then just scale it up to our quarter to make sure that we've got the right proportions for everything going. All right, so that's how we're going to start it up. Alright, I'm just going to make sure everything is looking right, and then I'm going to flip it around just so I have the right side looking at my model. And that's really not how quarters really are. They're actually, it's like top and bottom rather than left and right when it comes to how they're turned. All right. So the first thing I'm going to kind of try to do is just get rid of this extra text in the back. I was going to make the eagles, the standard eagle quarter before, but I thought there's just a lot of moving parts when it comes to the feathers and the sculpting the birds. So I figured, hey, let's do the Texas one just because it'll give us the same principles but with broader shapes and bigger shapes. All right, so now we're gonna create the outline for that Texas logo. And the simplest way to do that is just to grab your create polygon tool and just start in the left view or the back view, depending on where how your model is oriented on your monitor. Just start clicking and dragging. And if you start clicking and dragging clockwise, you're gonna point your normals up. And I skipped that area for the Texas logo just because I'm gonna make the star later. So I skipped that little star part, and then I just build the underlying Texas shape in between. And I'm not making it like super perfect. I'm just kind of giving myself a general outline of how everything looks, and then later on I can go back in and affect those vertices that I made and make them look the way that they are supposed to look, or the way they're shaped on the actual quarter. All right, I'm just closing out that spline out, and now I have the polygon shape that I want to. All right, so with this I can just go ahead and now select it, and now my faces are black, but that's easy to fix because we can just go into in the face mode, hold down shift, right click, and reverse those normals. All right, and that's exactly what we're gonna do here. We're gonna extrude this out, and then we're gonna reverse those normals. And that, what I'm doing right now is just affecting those verts and pulling them to where they need to go. I didn't match the silhouette of the outline perfectly, but I figured I could go back later on and just affect those myself. So that's exactly what I'm doing, making sure that all my lines, all my little points meet up with the reference. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just reverse these normals. All right, and you can do that by selecting the faces and shift dragging out, and then in the face normals, reverse those normals. All right, and then I'm just gonna hold down shift to extrude out my polygon there. Just shift drag out. All right, and that looks about right for me. So now we can go on to the next step, which is triangulating it, adding your poly retopo mel script, and then that should retopologize it and give you some geometry. It looks a little something like that. All right, it's going to be a lot smoother, it's going to look a lot better, and we can sculpt on this even if we wanted to. All right, the poly flow is correct, and this is something that we can definitely use. All right, and this is one of the more powerful features of Maya. So what makes it a really good modeling tool right here is that power to retopologize kind of any mesh that you have and give it proper topology that'll help it smooth out better and everything. So now we're gonna go on to making the star. All right, so this part is it's pretty straightforward as well. What you're gonna want to do is in your attribute editor, create a cylinder using your poly modeling tools, and then I'm going to create a 10-sided cylinder, and that 10-sided cylinder I will then squeeze in and get the shape that we're looking for. All right. So grab 10 sides, and then out of all those 10 sides, I am going to select 5 of them, alternating the ones that I pick back and forth. All right, so I'm just kind of placing it to see how it fits and see where it goes. I want my size and proportions to be accurate to the star as much as possible, just so that we have, you know, as close to a reference as we possibly can. So I'm just gonna go through and just start selecting those alternating edges. So every other edge is what I'm gonna select. Issue. So now that I have all those edges selected, I'm gonna hit R and then just scale those in. Just scale them all the way in. All right. Using that yellow middle cursor. All right, that's what you're gonna use to scale it in, and I'm trying to just find like the depth of how far everything is sunk in compared to the other side. All right, so just trying to match that reference a little bit, so how far it's pulled out, and you know, all of that stuff. I'm trying to make sure my sizes are accurate in comparison to those. All right. So now that we're done with that, we're gonna start welding all of these sides together. And inside of Maya, you can weld with 2 different options. You can target weld from one vertex to another. You can target weld edges. But the function we're gonna do is, instead of targeting it using the target, we're gonna use the center. So we're gonna merge our object to the center. So every time we select 2 verts, it's going to merge it right on the center of those verts, giving us like a perfect kind of star shape, a perfect weld down the middle. And that's exactly what we want with this. So we might miss 1 or 2, but we need to go all the way around and kind of just weld those center edges together. All right. take your time. If you need to hide everything, I'm just kind of going from memory and, you know, just feeling it through, but I would definitely suggest that you hide everything while you're doing this process. You know, it takes a while before you can just work in this kind of like not seeing it perfectly, and even in these situations you might miss something. So for anybody starting out, I would definitely suggest just, you know, making sure that you can see what you're working with. All right. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the faces on the back, and I'm going to just delete those and get those out of there. All right. Just going to get those bad boys out of there. I was trying to use the vertex to select the edge, but it wasn't working. So I just went ahead and just shift selected all of the faces, and now I have everything selected. I'm gonna alt. Okay, the reason is because I didn't weld this one for some reason, so I'm gonna go back through and target weld this. All right, now we have everything welded together. Now we can go ahead and select the back of our object. And I think I might have shift double clicked earlier to get everything selected, so I don't want to do that. Now I can just delete, and now the back of this is gone. So I just hit delete on that, and that should have everything disappear. So now I'm just gonna go in and select the interior edges. All right, and these interior edges, what I'm gonna do with those is I'm gonna bevel those and give them a decent chamfer, about 0.01. All right, that's 0.05. Let's go. All right, 2 segments. And this is going to give me a nice highlight down the middle of our geometry. It's going to give me a very nice highlight. And I'm leaving the chamfer on, and just to see what it does. So, all right, just looking for the best look for my star. And I found the settings that worked for me. All right. So definitely experiment with these chamfers and see what they do and how they affect the model and whatnot. So now I'm just gonna rotate my star back in place, going out into my my sub-object mode. There's so many different ways to go into the sub-object mode that you just kind of pick your poison and, you know, just go with it. So now I feel like my star is pointed out really, really far. So I'm going to try to address that by just flattening it out. And then, you know, I start off just moving those points back to where they're supposed to be. And if you hit R, you can scale them out that way if they're 2 vertices. And then do the same for the bottom part of it. All right, and I just scaled out a little bit and then pulled them down. All right, and I'm just using these basic modeling tools to kind of get the look that I'm looking for. And right now, yeah, it's just poked out way too far. It would cut you if you were trying to use that as a coin. And, you know, I just made it a lot flatter, and it's probably not as flat as it's gonna end up being, but it's giving me the feels that I need to continue the model. All right. So now I can unhide my Texas, and boom, place it back there where it's supposed to be. Bring this star back out. Now we can take a look at how it's how they're affecting each other and how the shapes are relating to one another. All right, and that's my main focus when doing things like this, is just seeing how those shapes relate to each other and how they play off of each other. So now you can just, to get a harder edge, because it was feeling a little soft, I'm just gonna pull this edge loop closer to that edge, so I get a harder edge whenever that smooths out. And if you don't have an edge when you retopologize, you can just shift ring and then connect that ring, and then you'll get an edge loop right through that you can use to harden that edge up a little bit more. You know, just give it that look, that polished cut look. All right. So yeah, I'm just gonna ring it and then just shift drag out for the star, so I have a little more to work with. All right. And then just push it in. And all of these moves are very, very subtle. They're very, very subtle moves. They're very subtle extrudes, and you know, I'm trying to get the most out of my polygons, so I'm gonna use them to the most effective way possible. All right. So I'm now going to the edge of the star, and I'm trying to add some edge loops to it so that, you know, either it gets smooth or I can turbo smooth it, and it'll look nice whenever that happens. So now that's my star, looking very star-like. It is the star of the show. All right, now everything's looking good. And it's always important to save your work. Save your work, because that will hurt you emotionally. I'm telling you. Nothing worse than working for 30 minutes to an hour straight. And in 30 minutes and an hour straight in a 3D package, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff you can get done in that time. And losing that work, trust me, it hurts you deep in your soul. So save, save, save. It's not a matter of if Maya is going to crash. It's a matter of when Maya is going to crash. All right. So never forget to save. Now, for this final piece, we're going to try to create the rope that is around the quarter. All right. And that's the next step for this bad boy right here. It's just creating that rope, bending it. And that's a pretty easy task once you know what you need to do to it. All right. We've already talked about this in the past, so this should be something that's pretty much a no-brainer. All right, if you know all the functions that you need to use to create the front of the quarter, then you know all the things you need to do to create the back of the quarter. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and just push these the star and the Texas logo back in. All right. So now this part is pretty straightforward. I'm gonna create the text here. All right, and then we're gonna get to the rope. So just watch this next part. I don't really need to explain how to create the text. It's been explained in the previous videos. So I'm just gonna wait for the text creation portion to be over, and then we can pick back up when I start making the rope. So to create the rope, I grabbed a cube, and then I manipulated the height, the width, and the depth. You can copy the same parameters, or you can use whatever your eye judgment determines is the right one. So I just kind of take my little rectangular rope shape over to the reference, and I kind of make sure the width is the same as the rope, and the height is close to the same, even though it's hard to kind of tell what the final height is just because our rope is currently bent on there. So I'm doing a bit of guesstimating, and then I counted the ridges. There's about 34 subdivisions in the height, 33, 34. So, and that's what I put in to match the rope's notches. All right, and doing that is relatively easy. All right, so this is just basically in your attribute menu, so you don't have to go far to start cranking these settings on. You don't have to do any real modeling yet. All right, this next step though is going to be a little more intense, because you need to understand some of the basic principles of 3D modeling to accomplish some of this stuff. All right. So the next step is going to be for you to select all of those edges. All right. So when you select all those edges, you're going to loop them around. So every edge except for the top one needs to be looped. And then you're just going to add a simple bevel to it. All right, you're going to bevel it by 0.01, and this will give you like a bit of spacing in between your rope, and that's going to give us that space that we need. All right. So after you've done that and typed in your settings, you can now go and do the next part, which is a little tricky. So there's a few ways you can do this. You can shift, double click, and then just make sure that you have the whole ring selected, or you can just use the marquee tool to swipe across and select the faces that you want. All right. So I'm gonna do it the long way, just so you know every way how to do it. There's there's many ways to skin a cat. I don't know why anybody would want to skin a cat, but apparently there are many ways. All right, we're just gonna make our way up this model. Almost there. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna extrude this. All right. So we're gonna extrude all of these faces that we have selected by about, I think, 0.05, and that'll give us something that looks a little like that. Now all of our edges are like that. So now when I hit 1 or 2 on the keypad, or 3 to smooth it out to see my smoothing result, I should get something that looks like these little donuts here. All right, so I'm just reducing my thickness to get something that's more desirable to me. All right, so the next step for me would be to grab the verts on one side and then just pull those right up. Pull those verts right up. And that'll give us that initial shape. All right, so I'm just gonna, select those, and in the perspective view, go back and just hold down W, and then just pull up. All right. So now that's what your rope is gonna look like. Now if you go into the object mode and hit 3 on your keypad, on your keyboard, you'll have a smoothing group that makes your rope look like this. So now in my containers, I'm gonna add a bend modifier to the rope. And because it's vertical, it should work off the break, off the jump. All right, we shouldn't need to rotate the bend modifier at all, because that arrow points to the way it's going to bend, and it's going to bend in the direction that we want. So I'm just going to go into the back view to see how my bend is working, and I'm just going to manipulate that bend tool. All right, I'm going to manipulate my model so that it matches the shape that I want, and then use that bend tool again. Add it. I want to get it as close to the center of that shape as you can, and then apply the bend modifier to it. So when it bends, it's going to bend correctly. And now after I bend it, I can mirror it on one side, and then job is done. All right. Alright. So with a little finessing, I can get that rope to look just right. So take your time with it and get it to look the way it's supposed to look. Now I'm just going to add that mirror modifier and mirror the rope so that I don't have to remodel this or do anything like that for it. Alright, so the rest of this model is just going to consist of making the rest of the text. So on that note, I'm pretty sure you can handle that part. So I'm just going to cut the talking off now and let you watch the rest of this video. You can definitely follow along. There's just going to be music playing now, and I'll let you get back to work. All right.
One.